This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. Joining me today for episode 357, the 8th annual official episode of I Read Comic Books, Three Sides of an Impossible Coin, Paul Jasley.
That's Judge Jasley to you, creep.
Danny.
I don't know how to follow that up.
And our good friend Kait Lamphere.
Hello.
Thank you all for joining me this week. Thank you, all three of you. Thank you to everyone who's broadcasting and hanging out with us live right now. Thank you for the technical difficulties. YouTube, I guess I had to press a button or something, or I copy and pasted wrong. I don't know. I don't know how to use computers. It's only my day job. But we're here today to talk about comic books. This is and celebrate all things I read comic books. But before I get into that, I have two announcements to make. One, at the end of this episode, we're going to be answering some questions from Twitch and YouTube, so make sure you stick around to get your questions answered. You could ask them during the show, but chances are we're going to miss them. So make sure to save all of your questions. We're going to stop the things, and then we're going to keep broadcasting, but the folks that are listening at home, you're listening to the post-recorded and edited version of this episode. Sorry you missed out. So make sure to stick around at the end here. Everyone else, do that. But the last thing I want to do is I want to say, give a shout out to all of the incredible people over at Comixology who were let go this week. It is an incredibly sad day to know that the death knell of digital comics was basically struck this week. A lot of really, really good people lost their jobs, and it's super unfortunate because I know that they were giving their heart and soul to a very, very rough, tough industry that was pushing back at them, and yet despite all of the hardships and everything, everybody pushing back against them, they were still giving it their all, and they were let go because of overhiring. We can talk about that all day. But yeah, I'm really sorry to hear to say that most of them, or many of them, were let go today, or this past week. So yeah. Anyways, hopefully things will not get worse. Things will only get better because we're going to talk about comic books, which is the thing that we do every week on the show. And so if this is your first episode or your 357th episode, welcome. I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Paul.
Hey, Mike. I'm doing well. For those watching, I don't live in prison. I'm not broadcasting from Folsom. Just I have a very sparsely decorated bedroom, so you can see my buddy Batman hanging out on my bed over there. So I'm doing well. I've read a bunch of comics. Some I wanted to talk about here on the show. One I read a while ago, but I wanted to talk about it on the show, so I waited till I was back on an episode to talk about Judge Dredd Complete Case Files Volume 11. This, of course, collects the Judge Dredd stories from 2000 AD Prog's 523 to 570, and that spans 1987 to 88, or if you're in Mega City 1, the years 2109 to 2110.
Because the Judge Dredd timeline, it lines up, right? There's a parallel, right? Okay.
It happens in real time. So the first Judge Dredd story is set in the year 2099. So yeah. I love reading this stuff. Those who've listened to the show regularly know I regularly talk about these Judge Dredd Complete Case Files because they're super fun. This volume, again, was written by John Wagner and Alan Grant, a whole variety of artists, including some young and upcomers you might recognize, Liam Sharp, Brendan McCarthy, Steve Dillon, etc. It's kind of cool to see artists that are now legends, getting their early start in 2000 AD working on Judge Dredd. And this volume in particular, really struck me because it's kind of great to see how Wagner and Grant have grown the character of Judge Dredd in the world of Mega City 1 over the past 10 years. And they realize what makes for a good Dredd story, and they realize what they can do with the character. And they're not afraid to show that the judges are straight up fascists. Some of my favorite stories in this volume are just the judges. The judges just psychologically terrorizing the people of Mega City 1. And just it's satire, but it's so close to what really happens, with police states and what we see. It's that fine line of it being funny enough to laugh at it, but it also cuts pretty close to the bone sometimes. But what's also kind of cool is that the way that they're able to world build and call back to older stories. And there's a couple stories in this volume I wanted to point to in particular that do that. Well, one story I did want to mention right off the bat is called Fairly Normal Man. And it's a straight up Superman parody. There's a superhero arrives in Mega City 1. He has fairly normal, let's say he's fairly cold breath, fairly hot vision. He's from a planet that exploded. And the only thing that can hurt him is fragments of his homeworld. And of course,
Sure.
he like shows up and tells Dredd, like, hey, you and the judges can handle traffic violations and parking tickets. I'll take care of the rest of the crime in Mega City 1, and it'll be fine. And of course, Dredd's like,
Perfect.
well, vigilantism against the law, that's 20 years in the ISO cubes right there. So he's got to take this guy down. And my favorite thing is that the story ends with Dredd basically shooting this guy. And I can't remember what the name of his planet, but he shoots him with the one material that'll kill him, the fragments of his homeworld. And he's like, how did you find it? It's so rare. And Judge Dredd says, well, the judges have a whole stockpile of fragments from every exploded planet that land on Earth, just in case something like this ever happens. And it's the funniest way to end that story. So you've got.
I'm glad that your two favorite things in the world came together for a book, just for you.
Exactly. Yeah, it spoke right to me.
Does that mean that Judge Dredd read Action Comics and that's why they're ready?
They might have, yeah. I'm sure there is a story in 2000 AD where they find copies of 2000 AD in Mega City 1. So,
my God.
But it's funny because you get satire like that, but like I said, you also get the straight up sort of like political commentary. There's one story called Reasons to be Fearful where a newscaster who uses his format to have critical stories about the judges on TV begins having these like nightmarish visions while he's awake. Like he's been like having these strange visions and like he's being terrorized by his brain. And it turns out the judges are using a fear amplification ray gun to give this guy wide awake nightmares. So he goes to a psychiatrist and says, I'm having all these visions. And the psychiatrist says, well, this is your fear of being caught by the judges manifesting itself. And that judge is psychiatrist is obviously a judge undercover. And he then changes his tune. He's like, oh, the judges aren't as bad as I thought, blah, blah, blah. So, and stuff like that. There's also another story about the judges having to stop a pro-democracy march. And again, it's like textbook subversion. They have plants in the crowd telling people that it's a waste to march peacefully for democracy. They find dirt on all the organizers and all that stuff. So it's not as fantastical as a fear amplification ray, but it's still like that type of story. And what's fascinating in that story, the chief judge tells Judge Dredd that democracy is the greatest threat to Mega City 1 since the Apocalypse War. That's the last thing the judges want, is the people to actually have a vote. And he tells the Judge Dredd, like, you get to write the laws on this one. You get to do whatever you need to stop it. It's kind of a chilling moment in retrospect. And I know I'm going on. I just also want to mention that the last half of this volume is a 26-part mega epic called Oz, which might be my favorite Judge Dredd story I've ever read. It involves Chopper, who's a sky surfer that Dredd arrested a couple volumes ago. He escapes the ISO chamber and he flies his flying surfboard from Mega City 1 to Australia to compete in a Super Surf 10 race.
Hell yeah.
Meanwhile, Dredd is in Australia investigating a group of rogue judges that were also cloned from Judge Fargo, just like Dredd was. And it's crazy. It's like a wild story, and it speaks to what Wagner and Grant are able to do with Mega City 1 and tell like this huge story. Like there are chapters where Dredd doesn't even appear, but it's still a Judge Dredd story because it's set in this world.
Right.
And it's about these themes. And apparently the ending of Oz, the decision that Dredd makes caused a creative rift between Wagner and Grant, and they kind of like split up. And they never worked together on Dredd again. Like they kept writing Dredd, but separately, not together anymore. So it's kind of like an interesting way to kind of see the character actually change very, very slowly in a very small way. And that causes the creators kind of like say like, well, I wouldn't do that, so let's go our separate ways. So, long story short, this is one of the best volumes of Judge Dredd I've read. I think it's very fun to read it from the beginning all the way through. But if you want to jump in, that Oz story is fantastic. I would highly recommend volume 11 of the Complete Case Files.
The question I have for you, Paul, is are there any giant Tyrannosauruses that happen to feature themselves in the middle of the story? Because that, to me, really adds the cherry on top of a Judge Dredd story.
So here's the thing. What's funny is like, because you're referring to the story that takes place in volume 2, which is basically Jurassic Park. They find out that someone cloned dinosaurs in an amusement park. In this volume, there's a story about an amusement park and all of the robots. It's like a violent music park. You can go to the amusement park and like
of course
play out like war stories or Old West stories. It's all very violent focused. It's called Kill Craze. And all the robots in there go nuts. So it's basically Westworld, which is another Michael Crichton story. So it's like they keep going back to the well.
What do these guys have against Michael Crichton?
Right? Every time Paul talks about Dr. Dredd, I feel like I want to read it, but it's the same hesitation I had as to starting One Piece. Because there's so much, right? And it's been for so long, they're kind of, I mean, I think similar timelines. Maybe, probably Dredd is a lot older.
No, One Piece started
Dredd's probably
90s.
A lot older, but
yeah.
It feels like it's been around forever.
Yeah. Well, Kait, I guess before we make this into a Judge Dredd podcast, I guess, how are you? How have comic books been? What have you been reading?
I'm good. I'm just trying to keep on top of the comics that I get from Hoopla and the comics that I get from the library and comics that I own. Like, it's the same story every episode.
Right.
This episode, I wanted to read Two Graves #3. The writer is Genevieve Valentine. The artist is Ming Doyle. Colors by Lee Lowridge and letters by Aditya Budikar. And I've said this before, but I read so many trades that reading in single issues is like starting and pausing a movie. So then I keep rereading the previous issues before reading the next issue. And then I have that tension of pausing again. And it just repeats like a month later, right? The world building in this book is so interesting. Like there's death and reapers and life forces, but then the protagonist is somehow still like a new and dangerous like power of some kind. She's traveling with this man who's some kind of reaper, but it's not clear how she got involved with him or why he's protecting her. And like each issue provides more details for the questions that haven't been answered yet. It's a really interesting story. Like if I can't read in trade, at least like this is how I want my single issues to be. Like I'm left with questions, but like questions are getting like a little bit filled in or I'm getting more details. So this is a really good book to read in singles, but I'm also really excited to read it once it's all out.
So you're already planning a reread for this book, even though you're digging it month to month.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. I read the first issue of this, and I was kind of just like, I was okay on it. So it's interesting to hear that it continues to like be interesting because I liked the mystery, I liked the premise of it, but it didn't like hook me and made me think like I need to get this second issue. So yeah, man, Kait, I hate you do this every time. I swear, every time I'm like, I was just in the middle on that book, and then someone describes it, and I go, okay, I guess I got to go back and reread that. What an idiot I was for not continuing it.
I did want to mention that there are also like these prose, like written out, not illustrated epilogues that are by different people each issue. But these epilogues are all relevant to the topic of like death or grief. And this epilogue in issue 3 is by Stephanie Lai, and it's about cemeteries in Australia. And it's got like the history of like the colonialism versus like indigenous traditions. And it's really interesting. And I know that a lot of comic book readers don't like prose in their comics. Sometimes I do not like prose in my comics.
I was going to say, one of them is on this episode right now.
But the epilogues are definitely worth the read, and they're not very long. So if you do read this book, don't skip the epilogues. They're really interesting. And I feel like they add to the story. Like they give it, like they contextualize it. Not that this fantasy story is going to be existing in like the real world, but these epilogues do, like they are real, they are relevant to the real world, and they kind of contextualize the story to like how it's relevant to us.
So Danny, you have to read this prose is what Kait's saying.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I guess I'll take a picture and then have Siri read it to me.
Perfect. Well, speaking of Danny, how are you? How have comic books been? What have you been reading?
Mike, I'm doing well. And before I get into what I'm reading, I've been struggling because on the 18th, my Shonen Jump membership, I guess that's when it renews. But I guess because of the price increase, I have to resubscribe. So I've been struggling to like I was gonna read more One Piece this weekend, and for some reason you have to do it on either your iPad or your phone or whatever. And I've been trying to do it. Like I've been trying different payment methods. I'm telling you, I promise I have $3 to give you, Shonen Jump. You just have to allow me to give them to you.
I'll get on the phone with Mr. Viz or whoever I need to and make sure that we get that sorted out.
I'll reach out directly to Oda. Like, listen.
Yeah.
But other than that, luckily I have American comics to read while I get that taken care of. One of those was Batman One Bad Day, Bane #1. This is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Howard Porter. colors by Tommy Murray, and letters by Steve Wands. This is the last Vengeance of Bane. So DC's been doing these little one-shots for Batman One Bad Day, where they just get like this fantastic team of creators, and they keep talking about like each one of the like different rogues. 8 different rogues are gonna be total. So this one's about Bane. In this one, Bane broke the bat, and he's one of the only villains to ever truly vanquish the Dark Knight. Go check out your 90s comics for that story. But is that all he's ever accomplished? So in this story, he's a washed-up wrestler in the future, and he's trying to source... there's a new source of venom in the world, so he wants to destroy that and shut it down because he knows the harm that venom can do. So it's really interesting. Just that Bane now is at this point in his life where he knows venom is so dangerous to be made that he wants to get rid of it. And he's going to need Batman's help for that, which is really, really cool. Like, I just thought it was a really interesting pairing. I gotta say, I was hesitant about Porter on the art because I love his stuff on the Flash, but Bane's a way different character. But as soon as I saw a spread of Bane as a wrestler in Porter's style, I was like, oh, this is gonna work. He's just like this massive, like dude. It just really, really works. So it's really cool because in the story, Bane wrestles a guy dressed as Batman every night. Pretty much, that's how he kicked things off.
Okay, hold on. Are these One Bad Day one shots just like a bunch of fantasy? I don't understand what's going on here.
I think this is just fanfic for those people. Like for every creative team, they're just like, give us your and it's Black Label, so like it doesn't matter. Or in the continuity of things, they can do whatever they want.
Everywhere, regular stuff in a Black Label book.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see Batman and Bane working together. They have a complicated history because Bane broke Batman's back. He also killed Alfred more recently in the Tom King run.
Hey, whoa, spoilers. Whoa, hey.
Listen, if you got past the wedding and didn't keep reading, that's your problem, all right?
Right. I mean, it's retconned, right, at this point? I don't know.
Yeah. Actually, well, he's still dead so far, so...
Still dead?
Okay.
Yeah. This DC's finally sticking to one thing, but yeah, these One Bad Day one-shots, I think I really enjoyed every single one of them. We got a couple more. I think there's like 3 or 4 more left.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that stuff.
This was great. Obviously, you can imagine, Danny, as soon as I opened up the issue and saw it was Bane as a luchador fighting a guy dressed like Batman in a wrestling ring, I was like, this was made for me. They did it. So it's super fun.
Paul's trying to find more ways to buy this book, right?
And like you said,
there were 5 covers, so...
Yeah. I only got the one. Darn. Well, like you said, like I know Howard Porter's art from his work on JLA in the 90s. So in my mind, it looks like that, like sort of like more of a clean, traditional superhero kind of look. And I like that he's like leaned into the more exaggerated, angular aspect of his artwork. Like it's a little bit more abstract, and it really fits, especially for the wrestling sequences. It looks amazing in this book.
Yeah, there's some body kind of horror type of stuff in this book too, which really works. Like it was every time I turned the page, I was like, Howard Porter, I'm sorry, I doubted that you being on this book at all.
Cool. Well, I guess for me, I've been doing all right, been very busy. I hung out with a guy last night who was dating my wife's friend, and he wore those toe-only shoes, and I saw them, and I couldn't believe it. I'd never heard of anybody actually wearing them. I thought it was just an Instagram ad prank. Turns out that it's a real thing, and someone wears them.
So you ordered a pair for yourself?
Well, I was going to get to that, Paul. Thank you for spoiling it.
That's why we did it live, so everybody could watch.
Right. No, I could barely walk around on like nice, comfy shoes, let alone shoes that make me feel like I'm in touch with like the entire earth at the moment I walk around. Mm-hmm. But no, I did read some comics. I'm still reading through Strontium Dog. Those books are very dense. I mean, Paul, I don't know how you're reading through all these case files of Judge Dredd, but those British guys in 2000 AD, they write some dense comic books. And I know they have to because it's 8 pages and that's how much of a story you get. But holy crap. Strontium Dog is amazing. I love it. I absolutely cannot get enough of it. However, I can only read it at like 40 or 50 pages at a time because then my brain has to like digest all of the food that I just put into it. The series is super cool.
It's about a mutant, so it's right up your alley, right?
Yeah. Well, that's how Graham pitched it to me. He sent me an email. Anybody can send me an email, by the way, ircbpodcast@gmail.com with some comic book recs, and I can almost guarantee that I will read at least one of the books you recommend, but I'm going to give an honest review, so it better be good. I'll just say that. But I did read another book called Above Snakes. This is volume 1. I think it's the only volume. This is by Sean Lewis on writing, art and colors by Hayden Sherman, with letters by Hassan Otsmani Elhau, our best friend in Image comic books lettering as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how this book flew under the radar for me, but it's a Hayden Sherman book who I love, ever since I read Wasted Space. Sorry to those of you who read Wasted Space on my recommendation. Just gonna put that out there, blanket apology. But no, Hayden Sherman does a fantastic job in this book. This is a Western story. The synopsis that Image gives us is, Dirt is a man seeking vengeance for his murdered wife with nothing but a vulture to prod him on. Above Snakes is a fast and furious explosion of Western tropes and American vengeance that explores where our rage can take us. And I think that's a pretty apt synopsis for what this book is. There's a guy named Dirt, and he's talking to an imaginary vulture, and he's out to basically kill the people that killed his wives, killed his wife. And as much as that is an overly used trope, and it's this idea, basically the premise of the book is a humongous fridge. I do think that Lewis and Sherman do a great job of capturing what makes a good Western story. And I feel like the book overall has a wonderful look. And I will say, if you didn't like the art on Wasted Space, then this is only like a half step closer to what I think most people would expect to be like your average American modern comic. But I do think Sherman does a fantastic job with the colors of capturing a lot of emotion and depth of the characters. There's a lot of chaos in the drawings, but I feel like it's way more cohesive than that of Wasted Space. And even Thumbs, if you read that book, that's also Sean Lewis and Hayden Sherman working together, which I thought was a much more chaotic book compared to this one. The comparison aside, though, I do think that this book really, really looks gorgeous. And the one thing I want to shout out about this book is Otsmani Elhau shines in this book with some of the most interesting, non-traditional lettering choices to highlight words and bubbles and different things throughout the series, or this 5-issue series. I was really just blown away by some of the interesting choices that he made just to make something stand out. Like some of even the words laid out in the bubbles are really curious and non-standard, and it makes you really focus on the emphasis that's given inside of that word bubble. I think very few comics actually managed to take the lettering and do something super, super interesting. Like I can count on one hand the number of books that have memorable letters in them. This is definitely going up there as one of those books. I think Department of Truth is another one that's way, way, way out there. But yeah, this one, I really think it was impressive what Hassan was able to do with this book. He even got a variant cover that is just a huge exploration in his lettering that I saw in the back of the collected edition of this. So I really think if you're looking for a Western book, you would dig this. So check this book out. It's called Above Snakes. Highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. And Mike, if you want to read more Sean Lewis, he's also writing King Spawn. Just throwing it out there. If you
right, if that's your bag, it's not mine. Not gonna pick it up. But yeah, let's keep talking about comic books. I guess let's jump back over to Paul. What else have you been reading?
I picked this up on a whim at the shop recently, and I really dug it. It's the first 2 issues of Pink Lemonade from Oni Press. It's written by Nick Cagnetti with letters, who also does the art and coloring, letters by Francois Vignault. Originally, this was published back in 2019, and then the series was picked up by Oni, who republished these first 2 issues, and then has published 4 more issues since then that are new. And this is, I don't know how to describe it other than just say go pick it up and look at it, because it's one of the most fun, colorful comics I've seen in a while. It's it feels like an all-ages book, but it also is a really smart sort of meta-narrative satire of superhero media in general. So the title character is a woman named Pink Lemonade. She doesn't remember who she is, where she came from, what her real name is. There's a name someone gives her. But she has a cool motorcycle helmet and a cool motorcycle that she's really good at riding. And she just wants to ride her motorcycle and have fun and be nice to people. And that's all she wants. So, of course, things don't go smoothly for her. She ends up sort of falling into a movie set and getting noticed by the director or the producer of the movie, who wants to turn her into a superhero. And at that point, it becomes kind of a commentary on, IP as it's used. The idea like, oh, you have to have a grim and gritty superhero. It has to be marketable, blah, blah, blah. You can't just be an altruistic person that just wants to help people and have, be bright and shiny, and positive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When she goes onto the movie set, she runs into a character named Ron Radical. And he's basically a parody of every Image character. So the second issue has the back page is like a spoof of a toy ad. That's all these extreme 90s characters and stuff. So the producer of the movie tries to make Pink Lemonade into that. There's a lot more into it that I don't want to get into. I think it's a very fun book. It feels kind of all ages at the same time being sort of smart and satirical. It reminds me a lot of the original run of Madman that Mike Allred did in terms of the art style and the pacing of the story. Things are just happening and it's kind of have to roll with the punches, and there's also like I said, that meta narrative satirical aspect. It feels very influenced by the Flex Mentallo story in Morrison's Doom Patrol.
Interesting.
There's a whole point where Pink Lemonade is having these dreams, and it turns out the person she sees in her dreams is also controlling things behind the scenes. So it becomes this story of who's controlling who, where did she originally come from? Is she just a fictional character that's in the real world? I really enjoyed it. Like I said, picked these up on a whim. I'm going to have to track down the next 4 issues because there's 6 issues out right now. It looks like the trade is due to come out in July. I highly recommend it. If you want something that feels a little bit different and not your standard typical superhero fare, Pink Lemonade's where it's at.
Cool. I was gonna make the joke that I thought this was part of the Radiant Black universe, but I forgot that there was a Radiant Pink book that came out, so maybe they wouldn't do 2 pink books. But we had Francois on the show a while back to promote another book that he was working on. I'm excited to see that he's working on another book through Oni. I think that he's got a very good relationship over there, so that's really, really exciting. Well, I guess let's move on to someone else. I guess Kait, what else have you been reading?
Yeah, I recently read a manga called Touring After the Apocalypse, Volume 1. It's by Sakai Saito, and I picked this up because the cover is really wholesome looking. It looks like 2 girls on a motorcycle traveling through a city that maybe, society has collapsed or something. No big deal, whatever.
Just gonna ride my bike through an apocalypse. Don't worry.
Great time to have some fun. The main character does fit the extroverted, excited manga girl archetype, but then her friend who looks like a human is some kind of encyclopedic combat android, maybe. At one point, they also run into a man who is uploaded, a human person has been uploaded into the body of a robot. So there's something going on here with the backstory has cybernetics and robots and things like that. And at this point, I feel like it's worth mentioning because this was quite nice. Tokyo is flooded, which was not nice, but there are penguins everywhere.
Cool.
So that was very cute and adorable, and it kind of lifted up the story a little bit because some kind of sad things do happen. I mean, this is set during the apocalypse, so there are the remains of people's lives. But those events, when they find things, those are kind of brief and sad rather than being traumatic or anything. It is mostly a story about 2 friends riding a motorcycle and being excited about finding a convention center or something. Mm-hmm. And as much as there are these little hints of sadness here and there, I really do like this book. I like the combination of genres. I like the characters. I like that this road trip genre. I've kind of been drawn to these road trip shows and comics and manga since early 2020. For some reason.
Why?
Volume 2 has an expected publication date of March 21st, and I've already checked, and it's on order from my library. So I've got a hold on that already.
Nice. I would recommend another traveling book because the only one that I know that I have in my collection is Crazy Food Truck, except that I think you would hate it. Because it's really fun and exciting in terms of the world building, but it's overtly kind of pervy. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. I don't know. And yet for some reason I keep buying it because I'm a
Well-
connoisseur of comic books.
Well, since I read this and like Googled it or like logged it in Goodreads and then Goodreads gave me recommendations based on it, I have found other road trip manga that is maybe not
good.
quite as sad. So I'll probably be checking more of this genre out.
Good. Well, let us know if you find anything that's maybe not pervy. I realize that I misnumbered everything in my notes here, so like I'm totally lost. Danny, do you have one more book you want to talk about really quick before I get to my final book?
Yeah, I have a couple more books, but I did want to say, so I wish I had heard this pitch for this manga. So anyone on the Discord, I dropped a picture yesterday of a bunch of manga I picked up because I was at Barnes & Noble and like
An absurd amount of manga. like not your normal amount of manga as far as a book buyer goes. Like I'm the type of person that goes and shops for a lot of comics and manga, and you picked up way more than I would ever feel comfortable leaving a Barnes & Noble with.
I picked up a few ongoing things, but also I saw that cover that Kait just showed earlier for this manga, and I didn't pick it up because I already had too many things. But I do realize that I accidentally bought another copy of Volume 1 of Death Note, so I'm gonna go return that, and I'm gonna trade it for this book.
Swap it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I just wanted to check out a whole bunch of new manga, and having the volume, like I'm committed to reading it. And not everything is from Shonen Jump or Viz, so like, unfortunately, I can't just get to the app, even if I can't get to the app right now. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read this week we got the issue 4 of the new champion of Shazam from DC Comics. So I read issues 1 through 4. This is written by Josie Campbell with art and colors by Evan Doc Shaner, letters by Becca Carey. In this book, Mary Marvel, who's struggling to find her identity outside of her family, is after her brother Billy sacrifices himself in something that I didn't read. He disappears, and everyone is left without powers. But then Billy sends a rabbit to Mary to give her powers, because she is now the new champion of Shazam. Classic story. It is
classic.
It is now the year the rabbit. Happy Lunar Year for anybody that celebrates that. So, yeah, DC has all of this mapped out years in advance, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, one of the main reasons I picked this up is because Doc Shaner is doing the art. So that's like I'm gonna at least check out issue 1. It's a really fun, clean slate for Mary. Even with all the baggage of whatever happened to Shazam, that doesn't really affect the story as much, other than the fact that that something happened, right? So I wanted to make sure to get back into that, and I wanted to see a bit more of like Mary just trying to go to college, trying to live a normal life, and then all this superhero kind of comes back calling and gets in the way of all that.
Classic.
And since it was only 4 issues, that was a big selling point for me too, because it's a very small commitment.
I mean, Evan Shaner can only do like 4 issues, and then like the book never comes out again, right?
Yeah. Unless Mitch Garrett is doing the other half of the book.
Right.
I wanted to check this out. This sounds fantastic, but I missed the first issue, so I've been waiting for it to be collected to jump in. So.
Okay. I think you'll enjoy it. It does at the end set up some stuff for Last Year's Planet going forward, but I mean, other than that, like you get a complete story about Mary Marvel and her family and everything that's going on. So that was really cool. The other book I'll quickly touch on is it's called White Savior #1 from Dark Horse Comics. Okay. Written by Scott Berman and art by Eric Wynn, colors by Yuan Yoko Triono. This is a samurai satire, of course, because of if you look at the cover, you'll immediately know kind of what's going on. An ancient prophecy foretold of an outsider that would save the peaceful village of Inoki from an unstoppable army. A man who would confuse the people at first with his unconventional ways but lead them to light. Nathan Guerin, captain of the United States Army known for his viciousness in battle on the American frontier, could be that man if he weren't such an awful drunken idiot.
Wait, is this just like a direct parody of The Last Samurai? Is that what this is?
That's exactly what I wrote on my notes. I was like, this is like if you take Tom Cruise's Last Samurai movie, but if they had told the truth. That's what this book is. It also feels like an isekai, like a different world story if you're a manga reader. Once we get to meet the main character. So once we meet our main character, who's a history professor. Then Todd Parker's his name. Then he's the one that kind of really the story's about. But it was a really interesting concept, and I love checking out #1s about things that I know nothing about, Also, Eric Wynn was an artist on the Old Man Logan series that after Jeff Lemire and Sorrentino left. And his art is magnificent for this kind of stuff. Like it just really works for action sequences and battles and stuff like this.
His art is insane. It remind like I don't know if I love it or hate it. Like I'm so torn on it because like when it's quiet moments, it's beautiful. But then when in the action scenes, it's like scribbles. It's like you can feel the kinetic action in the page. I'm torn on it. I'm so torn on it.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the first issue, but I think it's gonna read a lot better collected.
Sure.
Because as opposed to some of the other things, like I just couldn't, like, I wanted the next issue. I had the same problem that Kait is having now. Check it out. Monthly comic books that I just wanted the next issue, and unfortunately I couldn't. So I was like, I don't want to do that to myself. I'll just wait till this is collected. But I really recommend this. Go check it out. I think it's really fun stuff without having to like dive into like superhero stuff. But yeah, that's about it. Mike, what else have you been reading?
Yeah, so I'll talk about one more book. I do want to say before I get into it, we had like a lot of people watching this stream, which I'm very excited, but we have more people watching on Twitch than on YouTube. I don't know why. I mean, I'm confused. But thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. Remember, stay till the end of this episode. We're going to do a Q&A. That's only going to be for folks that are watching live tonight. So make sure to stick around and have your questions answered. But I want to talk about one more book, which is Hitomi, number 1 through 3. This is written by H.S. Tak with art by Isabella Manzanti, layouts by Nakata Bia, colors by Valentina Napolitano, and letters by Rob Jones. And this is essentially a samurai revenge story with a minor twist. This was on the top of my pile a few weeks back, but I missed issues 2 and 3 even coming out. I think I just forgot to click that subscribe button. And so I went back and I reread issues 1 through 3, and I remember my complaint about this book when Image, like their synopsis on their website, pitched this book as Kurosawa meets Tarantino, and it's like I sometimes hate that description, like when it's like this director meets this director. Like this is comic books. At least give me a comic book comparison, right? Like Stan Sakai, but it's more brutal would have been a better description, because that's what this book is, right? This is a really cool samurai book. Funny enough, though, this is a weirdly apt description. Like I'm actually kind of mad at how correct the description is of Kurosawa meets Tarantino, because it definitely is. It feels like a kind of edgy, real, true to life as possible samurai story. And I feel like Tak does a really good job of trying to make sure that they're telling a story that feels like culturally sensitive and actually is telling things, but with a twist of there is a Ronin who exists in this universe who is dark-skinned, and they're from Africa. That's kind of the implication in the story. But yeah, the art in this book is fantastic. I don't want to spoil it because I think this is probably going to be a really good trade when it finishes. But yeah, like the art is unbelievably solid. There's like a boldness to all the lines and colors that makes the book really stand out when it comes to just action, like medieval times-ish, era comic books, whether that's a fantasy European story or a story that takes place in Asia or whatever, way back in these early ages where people were dressing in armor and carrying swords. I think that this creative team, especially on the art, does a fantastic job of just portraying a cool-looking comic in that era. Some of the storytelling, though, is okay. Like my ratings for this book went up and down as I was reading. I went from like a 4 to a 3 to a 5, and I think that the third issue really solidified for me that this is going to be a super cool book to read, especially once it's all finished. The pacing is really solid, but there are beats, specifically in issue 2, where I felt like there needed to be a breather moment, which is something that I wish that more Western comics would take their time with sometimes. Manga does this really well, where there are moments where something happens and then there's just a beat. It's an empty panel, or it's like there's this thing where they'll like shrink panels or grow panels, or even just showing the same frame or panel like multiple times in a row to show that a character is processing something. This book kind of suffered from that a little bit in the second issue, but other than that, I think this book is really cool. It looks really good. It feels like a super serious samurai story, and I've lately been like really into those. Been rereading Yosagi Yojimbo, and I just in Blade of the Immortal, and I'm just like, yeah, another story in this era. It's really cool. So I think if you haven't checked this out, this is really cool. Otherwise, wait for the first trade when it comes out. I think this is going to be a super cool collection to have on your shelf. I don't know if you guys saw this or whatever, but I'll complain about or yell about it all day if need be.
I didn't know about it, but
I know.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say. I think I was on the episode with you when you put it on the top of your pile. So
yeah.
I also highly recommend this, but I'm also waiting for the trade on this one. So, but I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
I was going to say I don't remember hearing about it, but I just looked at the covers. If the covers are the same artist on the interiors too, I think. And
yeah.
It looks.
Yeah.
Those
For the
covers
most
are
part, yeah.
striking, so I'm gonna have to track this down. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
So
I swear, if you look at just the preview for like the first issue, you'll be hooked. I think. Yeah, again, I could talk about this book all day. Like the person that did the art for Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton, whose name escapes me. I had it and then I lost it. Very similar, like inking styles, which is really crazy to say. And I really love the art style in the Six Sidekicks book. And I think if you like that style, you're really going to dig the style in this book as well. But
sure.
Yeah, let's move on to our favorite topic of every episode, which is what's on the top of your pile. We're going to talk about books. If this is your first episode, we do this thing every week on I Read Comic Books where we talk about books that are new or old or just sitting on our shelves and we're finally getting around to, and now we want to talk about it. So let's dig into things. What's on the top of your pile? Let's start with Kait.
I am excited for a book called Tales of Carnival Row, and there are a whole lot of creators on this. So I dropped the...
Danny's freaking out over here if you can't see the video.
I'm just so happy that somebody else is excited about Carnival Row other than myself.
Yeah. I dropped the link to the publisher page in the show notes. So if you're on Patreon, you can look at our show notes and you can link to it there. Otherwise, I just found it on Google, so you could Google this. It's an anthology, so thus all of the creators. This is a Kickstarter, and my book arrived in the mail today. So, like, I was like, wait, do I read this or do I wait? Like, do I rush and read it before we record? This is an anthology of stories, and it's set in the world of the show Carnival Row. And if you don't know about the show, it's like this star-crossed lovers story set in like an industrialized fantasy world. Cara Delevingne, the actress, plays an activist fae woman who's trying to save her culture and her people from invaders that are definitely some kind of like weaponized werewolf army. And then Orlando Bloom plays a detective in a place that's called the Burg, which is the industrialized city. And he's the only detective willing to work with the Fae. And he slowly like uncovers his mysterious parentage. It's a really good show.
Did this show get canceled though?
No. Okay. So season 2 is about to release in like just a couple of weeks on Prime. So this book is like really like the release is super well timed. Whoever planned this like release, and the fact that like there's been like paper shortages and things like that. So like the fact that this even like made it like all out to its Kickstarter supporters before season 2 was aired was like really good planning on someone's part. And like, so season 2 airs in a couple of weeks, but that's going to be the last season. And I am bummed that it's ending, but I'm at least like, hopefully they knew that before they wrote the season. So hopefully it'll be a good, well-planned ending. And okay, so back to the book.
I mean, I just say I thought this was the Carnival show that was on HBO, and I was like, why would Kait read a comic book? Okay, anyways, go ahead.
I don't even know about that one. So flipping through this book, I haven't started it yet, but like just the art looks beautiful. I recognize the characters, which in an adaptation like this, it's not an adaptation, it's an expansion. Anyway, like there's always this threat of the characters not looking like the actors, and like they are artistic representations. I mean, they're not like photo stills or anything, but I recognize them. I know who they are.
It's not Salvador LaRocca drawing Han Solo's face, right? Is that?
And then the cover looks stunning. There were actually 2 cover options, and I was like, this is the one. I would frame this. And just based on the titles of the stories, like on the contents page, I'm expecting that this book is going to like fill in subplots from season 1 that maybe they're not going to get to season 2, or they won't have time to address. Or maybe I'll just be getting more details than somebody who's only watched the show. Either way, I'm really excited about this. This might happen like as soon as we're done recording.
Dang.
I really like when a property that's in one type of media, like a TV show, expands into another type of media, like a comic book, because like we see the opposite a lot, but we don't see it that much used as like a world expanding option. And I just really like this. Like, it allows for more stories. It allows for additional content, or like things that would be impractical to stage for television. And I just like that somebody was like, we should make this book, and then it happened.
I mean, we say this all the time on the show, but comic books, the best medium that there is to tell stories?
Absolutely.
Maybe? Question mark? I had never heard of this show, but I can't believe that Orlando Bloom is in a TV show. So
yeah, it's great. They have so much chemistry on screen. It's
they really
wonderful.
do. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Danny, what about you? What's on the top of your pile this week?
Well, I want to do a quick shout out to Action Comics 1051 that's coming out this week. Usually, if we had recorded at our usual time, that would have been on the top of my pile. But DC sent me a review copy, so I had to read it early so I could actually do the review in time.
I see.
So I pivoted, but it's really good. It's one of the first ones for the Dawn of DC. Anyways, so I pivoted to a Marvel book. Sins of Sinister #1 comes out this week. I think if you follow me on social media, if you've heard me previously in the show, I am enjoying everything that Kieran Gillen's doing. This is the Kieran Gillen event. Art by Lucas Wernick, colors by Brian Valenza, and letters by Clem Cowles. This is the Powers of Essex, which the fact that they went back and did a pun on their own Powers of X thing, like
it's absurd. I'm so mad at Kieran Gillen for this event. This whole event is making me mad, and I fucking love it.
Yeah. It's so you do have to read Immortal X-Men #10 that came out this week. I would think at least read that one because it really sets up all the seeds. But it's the end of the world as we know it. At least Sinister feels fine. It's so dope. I love reading this because I almost feel like Kieran Gillen wrote this synopsis. But yeah, the universe is melting. X event begins here. This is gonna launch a whole bunch of books that makes the Age of Apocalypse look like the X-Men swimsuit special, which for you 90s kids, that's probably it's real right up my wheelhouse. So like I said, Kieran Gillen's been doing Immortal X-Men, which is one of my favorite events. One of my favorite series. He did the Judgment Day event, which I really, really enjoyed.
Oh my, Danny, I'm right there with you, man. I feel like it's rare to have an event that actually spans beyond the X-Men and have it actually work, and yet it was this beautiful love letter to the Eternals, and it was so good. So good.
Yep. So go check that out. But and I really hope that Mr. Sinister is as much fun to write and draw as he is to read, because for the last few years he's been one of my favorite characters to follow. Like no matter who's writing them, they've been really nailing the voice and just everything that makes him like a really interesting character, because he's the worst. He really is the worst, but you just can't help but to want to read more. So I'm excited for Sins of Sinister and then the plethora of books that are coming out of that. So
yeah. I just got to give a quick shout out to our friend Hugh, who's hanging out with us on YouTube. They commented, "All my Essex live in Texas." So that's for you, Danny. That's for you. Paul, what's on the top of your pile? I mean, I'm excited for Sins of Sinister, but I let you have that one because I'm reading a different book. But Paul, what's up with you? What's on the top of your pile?
Well, I'm gonna bend the rules and have two books on top of my pile, because one of which I thought was coming out this. Sorry. It's the annual. Things go crazy.
Who are you,
annual.
Nick?
It's true.
Exactly.
We're 50 minutes into an episode, man. We can do anything on this week's episode. It's fine.
Most people will stop listening at this point. So
they're done. No one's even on the YouTube or Twitch anymore. It's just us.
Oh, perfect. Well, this book I thought was coming out this past week. My shop didn't get it, but it looks like it's also solicited for next week. So hopefully I'm getting it at some point. It's Santos Sisters #3. I've talked about the Santos Sisters on the show before. It's written and drawn by Greg and Fake from Floating World Comics. It's one of my favorite comics coming out right now. It's super fun, absurd. The best way I can describe it is Archie Comics meets 90s Image. The drawing style that Greg and Fake have, the printing that they do, that double offset color printing, it looks like an Archie double digest when you look at it. But the Santos Sisters, the main characters, are basically like 90s Image superheroes. They're superpowers. They can fly, shoot energy beams, and carry giant laser guns. And it's like this brilliant satire of both that is like a true satire, comes from a place of appreciation and respect and love for what they're satirizing. It's a great comic. So I'm excited to finally read the third issue of that, which hopefully I'll be getting at my shop next week. The other book I wanted that I know for certain is coming out next week is Batman One Bad Day Catwoman #1. Danny and I already talked about the One Bad Day one-shots. They're fantastic. This one has the bulletproof creative team of G. Willow Wilson writing it and Jamie McKelvey drawing it on a Catwoman story. In the words of Stan the Man, enough said.
I mean, I can't argue with that.
Right.
I will say Santos Sisters, before we could talk about Catwoman. I meant to say this and I didn't interrupt you. Santos Sisters, they were very kind and they allowed us to print a half-page spread ad in their comic. So if you want to see a really cool IRCB ad that is in the middle of a book and it looks beautiful, they took the old style JLA logo that we have and printed it right in the book with our brand new catchphrase, which is we're the best comic book podcast for regular comic fans, which is absolutely true, I think. But yeah, it's a beautiful looking book. They mailed a copy to me and it looks gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
I just want to point out that Paul mentioned that he's sure that Catwoman's coming out this Tuesday. Ironically, this was supposed to be the December book for One Bad Day, and it got delayed. But it is coming out Tuesday. But I just think it's really funny that we got 2 One Bad Days this month because of that delay. So, anyways, sorry.
No, that's all right. It's a Jamie McKelvey book. Sometimes it takes time. Or it's G. Willow Wilson. I don't actually know who the delays are. We always blame it on the artist, but sometimes it's the writer. We'll never know. But okay, before I get into my top of my pile pick, I want to shout out some of the folks on our Discord. A lot of them are watching tonight. Thank you so much for supporting us. And I sent a ping out to them before we started recording tonight to ask them what they're reading next. So we had a bunch of responses. Our friend Hugh is reading Saga number 61 this week. Jeff is reading Pluto Volume 2. Shout outs to Pluto. It's probably one of the best manga you can ever read. Hannah said they read The Long Halloween. Kyle is reading Jiangxi X, which is a new chapter that just dropped in the Shonen Jump app this week, which I'm very excited to read as well. Paul G is reading Immortal Sergeant #1. I read it last week. I have plenty of thoughts. Paul, very much looking forward to your thoughts on that. And Matt is reading Star Wars Yoda #3. After the big discussion that we had in our Discord about who's even reading Star Wars comics anymore, Matt, I'm so surprised that you're continuing on this series. Let me know how bad it is.
Oh no.
For me though, this week I am excited to read Steel Streets #1 through 4. This is by Imadi Keen from Superhero Comics. It's an independent publisher. They publish online. I think you can buy physical copies of their books, but they're very expensive because they're very, very, very limited print. My cousin has been digging through a bunch of indie creators' works, finding people on Instagram and stuff as he's trying to create a comic. So shout out to my cousin Jared, who's working on a really interesting comic right now that I just read through today. But he recommended this to me because he said it felt like old school Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I was like, hell yeah, I just finished reading Last Ronin, and so I grabbed all of these issues. I haven't sat down to read them, but from the previews and from the skimming that I looked through them, this really feels like comics with an X. It's very two-toned. It's styled stuff that reminds me of the early days Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's got a RoboCop / Daredevil / TMNT feel just in terms of the vibe and kind of this sarcastic overall storytelling that it's doing. The preview pages again makes it look really gritty with a 90s era tone. I feel like it could be really, really fun. So I'm looking forward to digging into this just because, check out indie creator stuff. You never know. For a couple of bucks, you get some really beefy comic books, I'll say, digital wise at least. So yeah, looking forward to reading that. But yeah, we're not going to do a break because this is a live episode. So I hope you're buckled in, okay? For those of you listening live, we usually do a break and we let our Discord people kind of just shoot the shit with us, but not tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about everything else that's I Read Comic Books, just to let folks know what we've got coming up for the rest of the year and kind of just to reflect on the last year that was just amazing. So I'm going to stop talking for a second and maybe we can talk a little bit about what we have coming down the pipeline. Paul, what's happening on Patreon this year?
Well, Patreon supporters know that last year we did a complete reread or read-through of Grant Morrison's Batman run that was spearheaded by me, and it had everyone else guest on it. It was a lot of fun. Better Batmobile is what we called it, and we got a positive response. And look, with the Patreon shows, we can do what we want, and there's nothing I like more than talking about Batman on the internet with all of you. So we decided to bring it back for a second season. That's right, a Better Batmobile. season 2. Obviously, we reread all of Morrison's stuff, so I decided why not go back and read the material that inspired Morrison's run. If those who listen to the show know that Grant Morrison's run includes a lot of references to some obscure Batman stories. They treat their run like a complete sort of piece where every Batman story ever told is canonical. So I wanted to go back and kind of read some of the stories that influenced that, or maybe some deep cuts that maybe don't get talked about enough. We're going to kick that off, I think, in March. The first episode is going to be covering my favorite Batman comic of all time, and I won't spoil it. Friends might know what it is, but it's one of my favorite comics of all time. So I'm excited to do that. And again, it's going to be the same format. People jumping in and sometimes reading Batman stories for the first time and talking about them on the show there.
Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. Paul sent out a doc that's got like all the comics that are gonna be covered for season 2, which is 10 episodes. We're gonna be releasing them every 3 months, so we've got a lot of stuff coming in for that. And it's a crazy like array of comic books that inspired Morrison's run. So I'm super pumped on that because I'm gonna be on the first episode just like last season. That's right. It's gonna be great.
I'm also very excited because I love that, in 2022 is when I joined part of the IRCB. So I missed getting the cutoff for like being part of that Better Batmobile season 1, which I was like, can we do a 0 issue or something like that? But luckily, Paul decided to renew. Unlike Warner Brothers, who's been canceling everything, Paul decided to renew a Better Batmobile. So I'm very excited for that as well later this year.
Well, and honestly, Danny, having you on the show now, it makes me want to talk about Batman even more. So it's one of the reasons I want to do a second season, just so I can have you on. So there you go.
Yeah, by no means was this me putting a new person on the show to make Paul like work harder or anything. No. I just wanted another person on the show, like.
There you go.
I'm very much looking forward to that. We've got a couple of other things coming down the line, like the IRCB movie club that's coming up in February. It's all animated movies. We're still voting on what movie is going to be picked, but it's like between Akira and I know Akira's on the list. I can't remember what the other two are.
I think the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse. And what's the last one, Paul? Mask of the Phantasm. Like top 3, like these are banger movies, and we somehow have to pick one of them to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got another series that's going to be dropping on Patreon called Mike Feeds You X-Men, which is where I do the thing that I love to do, which is say, I'm going to give you this X-Men book. You definitely don't need to read anything else to read it, and then hand it to someone who has no idea what's going on. And then we're going to talk about it as I go, oh, actually, you needed to read this, and you needed to know this, and you actually needed that. It's going to be a wild ride, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. I'm taking suggestions for which X-Men runs could potentially be in the running for that first episode, but we're going to do an episode of that, maybe 2, we'll see. And then we've got another series, or maybe a one-off, and maybe a reoccurring thing, that's going to be Kait and Renee's Manga Corner, because of all the people on the show, Kait and Renee, and we're probably going to pull Nick into this as well, find some of the strangest manga ever and read it. And they've given me recommendations, and every time I go, what even is this? And they go, it's really good, isn't it? And I'm like, cool. So we're going to do a show about that where I think they're probably going to pull some people on and talk about manga. It's going to be really fun over there. And of course, the goal that we have for this year is we're trying to get to 50 patrons. And once we do, we're going to do the much fabled IRCB tabletop RPG game. We're probably going to play the Kieran Gillen based Die RPG and maybe do a couple of episodes of that. So if you're not a subscriber, I mean, that's the big incentive, hopefully. And plus, we've got other things cooking, a couple of mystery shows that we might do. But we're looking to aim to release one episode a month, just to make Xander's life easier and to make our recording lives and schedules easier and stuff. Because we're going to keep putting out the show, but we're also going to put stuff out on Patreon, so that's going to be really, really cool. We've got some other changes, I guess, coming up with the Goodreads, and I'll just pitch this over to Kait to talk about that because it's a state of a nation or something. This is a big thing. I'm surprised we don't even have a presentation with a deck. I should have made you guys, put all that together for tonight, but instead we didn't. But Kait, tell people what's happening with the Goodreads this year.
Let me just pull up my PowerPoint here.
Yeah. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
So I am very excited about our Goodreads group. We passed 1,000 members just a little while ago, and we did a giveaway from our merch store. We're currently at 1,043 members. So not only did we pass it, we flew past it.
Dude, insane.
It's very exciting. We used to do these book of the month where like we would vote on a book and we'd all talk about the same book. And we weren't getting great responses on that, so we've kind of segued into a theme of the month, and members can pick their own books within the theme. Hopefully so far it really has like generated more responses. People are picking up recommendations from other folks. There's people have really avoided spoilers and yet still contributed like, I liked this book, or this is why, or this is what I want to read next because of this book, things like that. I'm really excited by it. And then, of course, we always have a reading challenge every year. We don't have 2023's up yet, but we're going to move into that pretty soon. And yeah, if you're not on Goodreads, please get on Goodreads because I'd love to hear what you're reading.
The reading challenge so far. So I've been collecting the list from everybody, and we've got it like shared among the IRCB folks. And I've also been getting the folks from Patreon. So shout out to the Patreon folks. If you haven't gotten me your pick for this year, send it over. But yeah, we're taking selections from everyone, and we're changing the rules a little bit different from what we did in previous years. But ultimately, we've got an incredible list of books that are coming in, and I'm really excited for this year's reading challenge. I'm gonna try to finish it this year. I'm gonna try to finish it this year. If I keep saying it over and over, it'll become a mantra for me every morning when I wake up. But a lot of really good books, and I know that the books that I did read from last year's challenge were amazing, because it turns out we at IRCB have really good taste, and the people who are patrons of the show have really good taste. So just a heads up about that.
I've read some great books that I never would have read because of the challenge.
Seriously, that is the thing that I love the most about that, is getting recommendations from people that I never would have tried on my own had someone not just been hyped about that book.
If you ever don't know what comic book to read next, just go into the Goodreads group and look through and look through the threads, because I found some stuff that I'm like, where I didn't even know this was a book. It's really, really cool. Like it, and there's a lot of really good discussion that happens only there, which is also a very interesting phenomena overall. But yeah, Goodreads is just so much fun. So I'm glad we like the growth has been amazing.
Yeah, I can't express enough how cool it is to jump on Goodreads every once in a while. I know that I don't participate enough. We at IRCB realize we don't participate enough. We're always trying to fix it. But it's amazing to see the vast array of stuff that people are reading and what they're into, because it's not just Marvel and DC, right? Like everyone knows Marvel and DC characters. I think the thing that makes the Goodreads group so interesting is that it is more than that. People are always trying to reach outside of just those two huge boxes that we all know and we all love at the same time. Like, and we don't, not to knock the big two, but there's so much more to comics than just Marvel and DC. And I feel like the Goodreads group really, really embodies that. And I always appreciate it. Always appreciate the recommendations over there. So yeah, I have a question in my notes that says, which IRCB viewership is the best YouTuber Twitch? And I never followed up on what that meant. So I'm just curious. Right now we got 6 folks watching on YouTube, 8 people on Twitch. I'm going to say you're both amazing. And thank you for watching. I don't know. I guess like this episode's going really long. We've got a bunch of new merch, I'll say. For today, if you were a keen-eyed person, you maybe saw that our shop, we posted a bunch of new merch, kind of running with the big slogan of regular comic fan. You can buy a t-shirt right now that just says regular comic fan across the chest. We've got it in t-shirts, in sweaters, in crop tops, whatever your comfort is, what you can buy. And if there's something you want to see that we haven't made, 100%, we will put it on a shirt or something like that for you. I also made some new joggers that say IRCB on them. Finally, after many years of waiting, I can get my IRCB zip-up hoodie. I'm very excited to have that embroidered IRCB logo. So, go get your merch. And I will say, if you go right now, I made a discount code that is good for 60 uses. And it's IRCB 2023, and that will give you 30% off any order that you want. And so you can go buy stuff and get 30% off. That's more than our Patreons folks are able to use, which is 20%. So make sure you go use that at shop.ircbpodcast.com. There's a link in the show notes. IRCB 2023 is the discount code. Go do that. It would just be great. I just want to get the merch out there, really. We're not making profit on this. It's genuinely like smallest margin possible just to get the shipping and stuff like that handled. So yeah, go do that at shop.ircbpodcast.com. It's really, really cool. And you can also, I was thinking about doing like monogrammed face stamps on each of the t-shirts, but
Okay.
I well, with the cool thing that Flynn made for us, but yeah.
I want a cut off jean vest with like IRCB on the back. I think that would look real cool.
Dude, I was so close to making that with a big like
Yeah,
IRCB
yeah, exactly.
like emblazoned logo in the back. You'd have to cut it off yourself,
Okay.
but I could 100% make a jean jacket that says IRCB and a huge embroidered logo on the back.
I'm thinking
so
something
if
that
you guys want it,
I want it to feel like the Warriors vibe.
yeah. Okay, let's we're gonna go completely off track now. We're hanging out until we're done. So for the longest time, I think folks that know me have known me for a really long time know that I wanted to make like a gang style uniform, like from the Warriors. I saw the Warriors and I was obsessed. I was like, I want to be a part of a gang like that. We don't necessarily have to take a baseball bat to someone's head or, with clanking bottles. Warriors, we don't have to do that. But I do want to like have a style and be like, this is the IRCB look. And we could jump on the N train going down to Coney Island and people be like, don't mess with them. That's the IRCB gang. So Danny, all I'm saying is you and I, we're thinking the same, and I appreciate that. Thoughts.
I think anybody who watched the Warriors movie at a certain age, that there's a little bit something ingrained in their brain. So yeah, I do want to do the glass bottle and like come read comic books in the train or something like that. Like.
Fantastic.
I mean, Paul, Kate, what are your thoughts? Would you dress up as part of the IRCB gang if we put together an outfit? That's all I'm asking.
As long as it's cozy.
Sorry, I'm baseball furies for life. Sorry.
Damn it. They got him, Danny. Come on. Yeah, I have a lot more other notes. Is there anything you guys want to bring up before I get into my list of people that I want to thank for this year? Because it's been a big year for us. 2022, 2023 is going to be even bigger, but still.
I have been trying to increase the number of posts on Instagram in particular. So if you are not an Instagram follower, we're over there, and I try to post a few times a week. And I think I'm mostly the only person that's on there. So if IRCB replies to you, it's me.
It's Kate. Be nice to Kate.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, we have been doing a lot of our like social media stuff. If you're not following us on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram, I think we've really been putting out a lot of cool stuff. Danny's been 100% on top of the trends with the show, which I really appreciate. That Demon Slayer video that you put out this right before today's recording was top tier. I really, really appreciated that. But yeah, you and Renee and Kate, you guys have been killing it as I've been taking a social media break for a little bit. And I know Paul and Kara, you guys are involved too, but the three of them have really just been crushing it constantly.
Yeah. I would recommend if you guys want a little bit more content, or if you're on your phone, whatever, go check out our YouTube shorts, go check out our TikToks. We're trying to do interesting stuff. We're trying to do recommendations from creators. We're trying to pull clips from the show or expand on things things we might have touched on an episode and just expand a little bit on that. So if there's anything you guys are interested in us expanding, leave us a comment. And we will try to work on any of that stuff. We have 60 seconds to do it, but I mean, we can.
Danny's been putting Nick to work. He's just been like, hey, I got a topic. Give me some thoughts. And Nick's like, don't worry. I've already got 500 words written for you. He passes it over. That's how the Matt Kitten video came together. Just love you, Nick. Just joking. So. But yeah, no, you're right. We have been I've been recording some mini reviews for different books, some stuff that I've talked about on the show, some stuff that I haven't, just things that are mostly on my shelf that I'm like, hey, I never talked about this. Can I put together a 1-minute review that I can, recommend it to people? So I think the last one I did was I did one for A Cat's Day. I did one for Keeping Out, a couple books that I've only talked about briefly, I think, on the show, and that were really, really good. So, make sure to go follow us over there, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just move into my thank yous or whatever. We've been here for forever, so I guess we could wrap up pretty soon. But I do want to say thank you to my wife, Kelly, who lets me take every single Sunday and just fuck off for 2.5 hours to record the show. And just lets me close my door, and she's okay, he's doing his thing. So I'm going to say thank you to her. As always, say thank you to Xander. I think we all, from the bottom of our hearts, want to thank this guy who somehow makes us sound amazing every single week. I don't know if you guys have anything to say before I move on to the other people.
I just want to say Xander's this, he's kind of like the force of IRCB.
Yes.
You rarely... You never see him. It's very untangible, but it wouldn't, a lot of the stuff would not happen if he wasn't there. guiding things.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I think Xander would and he's just a really awesome guy too. So like, really cool.
It helps that he's a really cool guy too, and he's a really nice guy. I mean, he does manage to take what sometimes is really garbage moments in the show and then just like clip them out, and then they never existed.
Just
so
clip
you
out
know, if you're
everything Mike said, that's fine.
yeah, right, exactly. Wait, hold on. Whoa, you're coming for me on my podcast about comic books right now? Wow. Okay, I've known you for so long. I didn't know you had such a devious heart inside that chest.
Kay was waiting for the 8th annual to like
8 years of the show to finally bring out the guns.
I was saving
I see. Yeah, well, I guess, I want to, of course, the shout outs to Paloma and Kara and Tia and Kate Scotchless and Brian, Nick and Renee, everybody that is, has made this show possible over the years. It's amazing. We're here for 8 years, which is crazy. I was looking at our survey, which I'm going to get to the survey results at one point tonight. Don't worry. But yeah, I was looking at the survey, and there are people who have listened to this show for 5+ years. That 5 to 6 years I put in that's crazy.
Crazy.
Thank you. Like, I'm not even gonna like make fun of that point. That's amazing. That is like the greatest compliment you can give to some folks that are just putting out a podcast for fun. So yeah, it's incredible. So like to see, have Paloma and Danny come on this year, and to have Kara and Tia and Kate and Brian, Nick, Renee, Paul, Kate, Xander, we've all been doing this thing for 8 years. And I know there have been other people, our buddy John was on the show for a little bit. We had James, we had George, we had Jeff, we had all these other people that were on in the earlier years, but like here we are 8 years later, and we've got the same consistent group of people coming on the show with 2 fantastic new additions, of course. And who knows, maybe we'll expand some of that in 2023. I don't know. We'll see. More regular guests. But yeah, it's been incredible. I can't thank you all guys enough. That's crazy. I also want to shout out the guests that we've had this past year. We had Henry Barajas on the show. We had Gabe Chang, who is the creator of For Molly. We had Austin and Brenda from the Secret Histories of Nerd Mysteries podcast. Curtis Clow, who's the creator of Beastlands, that book that just came out from Dark Horse. We had Brandon Ingram, who did the Dismay Avenue book. It was really, really good. Yeah, we had a lot of really cool guests this year, hoping to have more. In fact, spoilers, next week's episode, maybe have a guest who's doing a Kickstarter book. But we're probably going to do more of that stuff. It seems like the interview episodes that we've done over the last year have been really cool. Just to talk comics with people who are making comics has been super cool. We also, I didn't put this on. We also had CK and we had Audrey on from who also did a Kickstarter, the Scott Snyder's Cloakroom book. So yeah, it's a lot. I don't know why that wasn't in my notes, but yeah, this is a great year for guests.
Was it also Simon's wife? Oh, sorry, Simon's wife was that was last year too?
Right? I think that was in 2021. I don't know, man. Like the years start to blend together, man. I'll be completely honest.
Can't keep it straight. Want to mention over on the Patreon, if you listen to the I watch movies, I read comic books movie club. There it is.
Yes, there we go. IRCB movie club. There we go.
Our good friend John Pataki, who hosts the excellent Best One Since the Next One podcast, was on the Dick Tracy episode. That was a very fun episode. So people get some more guests over there on the Patreon too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the thing. In IRCB Movie Club, we have Kev from the Austin Danger Pod that's going to be on with us in February to talk animated movies, which is going to be a blast, if only because Kev is a really, really cool guy. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to put that out there. He's a pretty cool guy.
Go listen to their Knight's Tale episode because it is amazing.
Their Knight's Tale episode was fantastic. So shout out to the whole, tape deck in 70mm group of folks that record podcasts. You're all fantastic human beings. And we really appreciate your support over there. So yeah, we talked about the merch. We've got our listener survey. Anything you guys want to talk about before we wrap up? Any comics beef you want to squash before we wrap up our 8th annual episode of I Read Comic Books, celebrating 8 fucking years of this thing that we do?
I have one gripe, and I need Marvel to listen up.
All right. Let's squash it right now.
I need Marvel to stop doing these. They're graphic novels that they're splitting up into one-shots. But they're one-shots called different things. So right now my main beef is one called the Murder World one with Arcade. I love the story. Yeah. The content of the story is amazing. But the first one's called Murder World Avengers #1, and then the next one's Murder World Spider-Man #1. The next one's called Murder World Wolverines #1. So don't do that to us. Look, I spend too much time looking over the comics that are coming this week and doing a lot of research for, nefarious purposes. But not everyone does that every week. So, like, they're going to be very confused. So, yeah, get better at that. Stop doing that. Like, just make a mini series. That's all you're doing. I understand number one sell more. But you're really screwing your readers there. So that's my beef with Marvel. I already talked about the Star Wars stuff last week.
If we look at what happened with AXE, it should have just been one, like 12-issue long or 24-issue long series. Because you know what? I was going to buy all of them anyways. It's not like you couldn't buy the books that Kieran Gillen wrote and understand the story completely. You genuinely needed to buy those stupid one-shots. And then I was hunting them down, and I was like, I don't even care about White Fox, and yet it's important to the story. So if you're gonna make me read it, just put it in the main series. Just come on. And the Sins of Sinister thing is just as bad. What's going on? It's only one book, and then you got to read all this other Alpha and Omega bullshit. All right.
Calm down, Mike. Take a breath.
I'm on fire. I don't know if you guys heard. I apologize to everyone. The radiator turned on at one point, and it was just, now my room it's 500 degrees in here. I'm on fire tonight. I'm literally, like, I'm almost feeling like I'm on fire on my back. So, geez, oh Pete. I guess we got to wrap the show up here. Unless there's more. Sorry.
I just want to say it's pretty wild, and I don't want to get too sappy, but it's pretty wild that we've been doing this for 8 years. I mean, I love talking about comic books, and it's pretty amazing that I get to do it regularly with people that I like, and we've had new people on the show, people on Discord. We would probably be talking about comics regardless, but the fact that people actually go out of the way to listen to it, and some people give us money to hear even more, the fact that people pay money to hear me talk about Batman, I cannot express in words like how happy that makes me when I think about it. So, Mike, man, we've been on this ride for 8 years, and hopefully it's many, many more after that.
Dude, I'm ready. Year 10, you guys have no idea what's gonna happen. It's gonna be insane. I'm talking like Mike gets on a motorbike and flies over the Springfield Gorge level of insanity. Okay. Are you ready? No, I don't know, man. It's 8 years of this show. It's going to get warm this year. I feel like there's a chance that we could do something in person with human beings. I put that on the survey. If you answer some of the extra questions, I was curious about where people lived in terms of like closest major city of some capacity. I don't know, man. 2020, man, was going to be the year. I think I said this last year on the annual. 2020 was going to be the year for like all of the like big stuff. We were going to hit it. I've got so many enamel pins and pins sitting in a drawer over here. If you are a patron subscriber and you filled out the survey, you get a pin. I'm going to send you an enamel pin. Really cool IRCB enamel pin that I don't have on my desk. Otherwise, I'd show you on video. But it's really, really nice. It's the same logo that we use on the embroidered sweatshirt that we made that our good friend Kyle Rose, who made our new logo and design. Yeah, man, I really want to do something like that. I really want to get together. Like when I came to Michigan to see you guys for my brother's wedding, it was nice to hang out with you at Founders and stuff, Paul. So like, yeah, I don't know. I want to do something. I want to get the people together. I want to get all these folks together that have been making my comic reading experience so much better for near on a decade. Like I love comics more than I did 8 years ago, which was quite a bit because of the community that we've built. And it's absurd to think that this can only get better because we all care about comics and we're all going to gripe, but we're also all going to share in the things that we love. Yeah, man, this year, I want this year to be the biggest yet. I want us to roll with this idea of us being like regular comic fans, because at no point do I think we are like diehard crazy like folks that can just like spout knowledge nonstop, right? We are fallible human beings. We are regular people who love this thing. Like there's nothing more than that. Like, and that's why I'm like holding on to this idea of we are regular comic fans. Like we all have pull lists. We all are way behind on books. We all have a to read list that we're never going to be able to finish. We're always going to take that new shiny book that we picked up from the comic book shop and sit down and read it before the 12 books that we know we had on our pull list. That is such a regular comic book thing. And I feel like there is this myth out there that you can be caught up and you can be ready. You can be on top of all of it. And it is an absurd notion, an obsession with perfection of being a fan that no one can attain. And if you do attain it, good for you, but you are the anomaly. You are not the norm. The regular comic fan, which is what all of us are, like, we are behind and we are always trying to play catch up. And yet at the same time, we can show up to the show and we could talk about something that was interesting, whether it was new or old. Like, Paul, you're reading through all these Judge Dredd books. Like, that's not on the top of your pile. That's not the newest book that you could have bought and read. But like, it is way exciting for me to hear your joy and excitement about that book than being like, I'm on Batman 986 and let's, they are just slogging. But you know what? That's the top of that's literally the next book I'm going to read because I love Batman. Sure. I love that change that we made with the show to talk about not necessarily what's a new book that we're going to read, but what's on the top of our pile. And I want the show to keep evolving with this. And take what works the best for all of us and talk about it, because I feel like we relate way more to everybody that's out there. And I think the folks who listen to this show relate more to us pitching books that we're just like, hey, I happen to pick this up, versus like, you got to be on top of what's coming out every Wednesday. Because I feel like that's way too much pressure. Why do we put pressure on ourselves for this thing that we love? All right, I'm going to take a breath. I care. I just care a lot.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, I got to take a drink with my IRCB branded Nalgene water bottle that I have.
As always, thank you, Mike, for producing and organizing and making the show exist, and then also great.
I try. I just wanna keep the train rolling, and I definitely know how to send an email every week. So like, it's the least I can do. I appreciate that, Kait. No, that's very nice of you to say. I like, that's all.
You guys like the listeners get this like every Wednesday or Tuesday if they're patrons. Go subscribe to the Patreon. But there's so much that happens behind the scenes that Mike is kind of orchestrating and I don't know how he keeps all those plates spinning, and of course I think everyone has a lot of input, but like just organizing all this stuff, it's a Herculean task, and I don't know how you've been doing it for so long, Mike. This must be your mutant power.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some people can see through walls, some people can fly. I can organize a lot of Google Docs really, really well.
I think that speaks to why the show has garnered an audience that it has, because like it comes from a place of pure love and like enthusiasm for comics, and like honestly, like the listeners get us every Wednesday, like you said, Danny, but like we're still talking about comics, in our private chats and stuff, behind the wall, and it's like those conversations that we're having on our little Telegram thread are the same ones you get on the podcast. There's no difference between us and our real life as fans and what you get on the show. And I think people can sense that. And I think speaks to why the show's been successful, why I like it, why I can be a part of it.
Yep.
Yeah. We hope that you out there listen to it and you like it as well and continue to like it. I mean, as always, you can send us feedback at ircbpodcast@gmail.com or send me comic recs. And I guess we'll wrap things up here with our 2 winners. I decided we had 18 responses to our survey, which is awesome. I really appreciate everybody who spent the time to answer the questions. We had a bunch of extra questions that were not required, and people still went through and filled those out like most people did, which is super duper cool. We had 2 winners. I decided we're going to pick 2 people that are going to get $25 gift cards to Amazon if you want, or Midtown Comics if you want to buy some physical books, or really somewhere that you can get some comic books. That's the goal. Is just to get more comic books into people's hands. So 2 winners. One was Stephanie and the other was Adam Rogers. So you know who you are. I'm going to send you an email after this to let you know that you've won, and we can get all that other stuff figured out. But again, thank you to everyone that spent the time and filled out the survey. It's a lot of really good and useful information for us to make the show better for you as people who care about I read comic books. And that's pretty great. So I don't know, final thoughts? Anything you want to say before we wrap up here tonight, guys?
Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
I'll say it before we get to the credits. How about this? Comics are good, and so are you.
There it is.
And that is, I live and die by that motto. I honestly do. Like, put it on a shirt. It's genuine. You can go buy that at the shop if you want. But I really feel that, like, comics are good, even when they're bad. It's just like pizza. So take that, run with it. But at the end of the day, you are also good, and you should run with that as well. So next week's show is going to be a special guest episode with Ari Gross to talk about comics, discuss their Kickstarter that's coming out called Awakening. It's going to be a lot of fun. Ari's a friend of a friend. Should be a really cool discussion to talk about comics and everything. As always, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, whatever, and Goodreads. You can make sure to go check that out. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast to get access to all the shows we talked about tonight, as well as a backlog of stuff like Giant Days of Our Lives, Paul and Mike read Doom Patrol, Book versus Book, IRCB Movie Club. There's so much on there. It's incredible how much we put together over like 3 or 4 years just on Patreon. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music, not on the YouTube tonight, but they will on the finally recorded or edited version. Xander has recently been spotted in many blurry photos taken in the Pacific Northwest. So if you live out there, keep your eyes peeled. I want to say thank you to Kait, Danny, and Paul for tonight. Thank you to everyone watching live. We're going to be answering questions after we finish the live broadcast today, or after we finish recording and wrapping up this credits once I shut my face. And again, until next time, comics are good, and so are you.